Hello, in this video I will show you how to replace the clutch on Volkswagen Golf 4 1.4 petrol. In order to have access to the clutch, we need to remove the gearbox. We will start by removing the two front wheels. Next, we're gonna remove the bolt for the twist rod and we're gonna bend the twist rod up. Next, we're going to remove the three bolts that hold the ball joint. Next, we're going to remove the nut that holds the CV joint. We'll do the same on the other side, the nut for the drive shaft, the three bolts for the ball joint and the bolt for the twist rod. If the video is useful, please like and comment on the video and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Next, we're going to remove the bolts that hold the drive shaft to the transmission. Now that we've removed all the bolts, we're going to take out the drive shaft from one side and from the other side and take the drive shaft completely out. Next, we need to remove the other drive shaft. We're gonna remove the bolts on the drive shaft first. And now we'll take out the drive shaft. Next, we're going to remove the rear engine mount. It's held by 4 bolts. Next, we need to remove the gear link. The gear link is just over the front subframe, just over there. We need to remove this bolt, the nut in the bolt, but first we're going to mark it with Tipex so that we put it in the exact same position afterwards. here we can see how I've marked it. It has to be in the exact same position, so it doesn't have to be turned at all, and it has to be exactly in the same way. Next, we're gonna remove the bolt and take out the gear link. And that's the gear link out. Next, we need to remove the 3 bolts on this gear link plate. 2 are just there, and there's one on the front that we need to remove. Just there is the 3rd one. Next, we're going to remove the bolt for the starter motor. There is 2 bolts holding the starter motor. One is on the bottom, which is this one, but first there is a nut holding this metal plate. It holds this pipe that we need to remove, and afterwards we can remove the bolt. Okay, that's the lower bolt of the starter removed. Next, we need to remove the upper bolt, but first we're going to take out the battery. This battery housing first, then with the battery. Now that the battery and the battery housings are removed, we're going to take out some bolts. Bolt for the starter motor. There is also other 2 or 3 bolts that hold the transmission to the engine. This is one of them. There is another one just there. There is a ground cable connected to this to the nut over there. Also, we need to remove these electrical connectors. Also, this brake line for the clutch that has to be removed from the slave cylinder, just over there. And then we need to remove the bolts for the gearbox mount. We start by removing this nut for the ground cable that we saw, and also there is the bolt for the starter motor is just after that we need to remove. Okay, one of the bolts that holds the transmission to the engine is removed. Now we're going to remove the other bolt for the starter motor. Next, we're going to use locking pliers to clamp the brake hose, so that when we remove it from the slave cylinder on the clutch, the brake hose is not gonna leak. This is the clamp holding the brake line in the slave cylinder. Now we're going to push it out. Just pull it out, not push it out. Pull it out, and we're gonna put it to the side. Next, we're going to disconnect all the electrical connectors that are in our way and move them to the side. Next, we're going to remove the starter motor. We've already removed the two bolts, one from under the car and one from top of the car just a couple of minutes ago. And now we're just gonna take out the starter motor right now and put it to the side. Next, we're going to remove the remaining bolts on the top of the gearbox that hold the gearbox to the engine. Next, we're going to remove the engine cover. Now we've put on this engine jack to hold the engine still while we remove this gearbox mount. The gearbox mount is held by 5 or 6 bolts that we need to remove. After we remove them, we're going to lower the engine and remove the gearbox mount. Now we're going to lower the engine so it's easier for us to remove the gearbox afterwards, and also to remove the gearbox mount right now. And that's the gearbox mount support out. Now the only thing left before removing the gearbox from the engine is to remove the remaining bolts that hold the gearbox to the engine. There is 3 on this side and one on the rear that we need to remove. We're going to put a transmission jack underneath before we remove the last bolt, and we're gonna start taking out the transmission. We're trying to remove the transmission, but there seems to be not enough space, so we're going to put a car jack just in between the subframe and the engine, and we're going to push the engine forward so that we make more space to take out the gearbox. And now there should be enough space to take out the gearbox. Maybe we need to wiggle it out a little bit and it will come out. And that's the gearbox out. Now we can change the clutch. So this is the clutch. On this car it's done a little differently. First towards the gearbox is the flywheel, and then there is the clutch afterwards. So first we're going to remove the bolts that hold the flywheel and remove the flywheel. That's the flywheel and the friction plate out. Next we need to remove the pressure plate. In order to remove the pressure plate, first we need to remove this metal bracket, and then we need to remove the bolts for the pressure plate. Now we're going to remove the bolts for the pressure plate and take out the pressure plate. And as the pressure plate out, next we're going to put on the new clutch. After we put the bolts for the pressure plate, we need to tighten it to specs. The specs for the pressure plate bolts are 60 Newton meters and 90 degrees. Make sure somebody is holding still the crankshaft on the other side where the crankshaft pulley is, and you just tighten it to specs. Next we're going to put on this metal plate and bracket that holds it. Next we're going to lubricate this center of this metal plate. This lubricant was in the kit for the clutch, and now we're going to put the flywheel and the friction plate. Make sure the friction plate is exactly in the middle, and then put on the bolts and tighten them. Make sure you center the friction plate, otherwise you won't be able to put the transmission back on. After putting all the bolts, next we need to tighten them to specs, which is 20 Newton meters. After everything is tightened, that's it, the clutch is changed. Next we need to put on the gearbox. In order to put on the gearbox, we need to wiggle it a little bit and it will go in eventually. That's the gearbox in place. Now we're going to put on a couple of bolts to secure it to stay in there. Now that the gearbox is in, we can assemble everything in the reverse order. Afterwards, we need to bleed the clutch. Bleeding the clutch is you have to press the clutch a few times and just open the bleeder screw on the slave cylinder to for the air to come out of the brake line. And then we're done. Thank you for watching.